Hi, my name is Amy Corona, and today I'm going to show you step by step how to paint an orchid. I'm going to start by how I picked out the background. I looked at a color wheel and decided I wanted to do orange with this purple. And I painted it out and realized I had selected the wrong color. It actually should have been yellow. So I went back to the color wheel, went, yeah, it really matched more with yellow, repainted the background, and there we have it. Now I'm going to show you my mixing, how I did the stem, and I'm going to start with a mistake I did on this painting, how I fixed it, and if you're like me and make mistakes in your paintings, I'm going to give you some ideas on how you can fix them a little bit differently than I did, and hopefully get a better result. Now here, I'm doing the stem and I made it a little bit thicker, just so that it would look like the stem is coming toward me in this painting. And what I really didn't realize is on the orchid, the stem actually tapers out and gets thinner at the ends. So when I drew this out, it really didn't look like the actual flower. It would, in this perspective, if I had drawn out this painting, the stem would need to be the same thickness throughout or even taper off to be a little bit smaller at the ends. So this is my first tip to you. If you're going to paint something, sketch it out beforehand. This will prevent a lot of mistakes and really give you a good idea of what you want straight from the beginning so you can get your painting right the first time. Now if you do that and you still make a mistake, there are some ways to fix it. Here I chose to just go over it, just try to match the background. And what I should have done before I started to do this is to sand it down, because at the end of my painting I have this really bumpy texture where my old stem was, and it distracts from my painting. So if I could do this again, I would have sanded it down lightly. Just get a sanding block from Home Depot, and I would have done it the same way, repainted the background, because I actually feel like I got a pretty good color match. So if you feel like you can match the color, this is a good way to go. Just sand it down beforehand. Now what you can do if you realize your mistake right away, which I did not, then you can just take a wet towel and you can wipe off the acrylic. Acrylics are really nice for this. They're water soluble, so you can just take a wet rag and wipe any little mistakes or blemishes as you're going. But the thing is, you need to step back. So this is my other tip, just step back from your painting every now and again. And that will let you see your mistakes right away, so you can just touch them up with a wet rag. Now the other thing you can do is just incorporate your mistake, and this is probably the best way to go if you have that option. For me, the stem was such a focal point in this painting that wasn't really an option here, but is definitely something you can do if you are able to in your painting. That's the best way to go, is just incorporate any mistake. Now here I'm starting to draw the new stem, and you can see how much thinner I'm doing it this time. And I chose to just outline it, and I have a wet rag here with me, so any spots that are just not coming out the way I want, I'm wiping off right away. And then I'm going back at the end, once I'm done with that, to make the stem thicker and then to outline where I want the flowers. Next I'm going to start laying down the flowers, and this will really show me the shape and make sure that I got the stem right. And because acrylics are semi-transparent, I don't have to worry about getting that perfect. Now this is going to be my final painting, and I'm going to show you step by step so you can follow along at home and recreate this. I'm starting with that orange background. I am going to end up changing that to be a light yellow, but I still like this. And if you want the same effect where you get a little bit of orange, then you can just go ahead and do that orange background too, or you can add in a little bit of stripes as you're blending the background. If you want me to do a tutorial of how to do backgrounds, please put it in the comments. If you have any other ideas, just let me know. Here I'm blending the yellow that I want, and I'm starting with yellow, and then I'm adding in a little bit of red, and that gives it a little golden color. Just be very careful not to overdo the red. you can really easily make it another dark orange. Now here I'm going over it, applying this golden yellow that I've added white into to make it a light shade. And I'm just applying this with a 1.5 inch brush. A 2 or 3 inch brush will probably be better. This is what I have, and so this is what I use. And it lets me do the nice streaking in the background. I'm dipping my brush into water and wiping it on the edge so that I can really apply that. Now here I'm going to blend the pot color. And I'm using my knife to just blend that thoroughly, mixing just until I feel like I got the right color here. So you can see I'm adding a little bit of red, a little bit of blue, and just blending. Make sure you're scraping really thoroughly because you want this to be one solid color. And I'm just using my palette knife to apply this really generously in the shape of that pot. And then I'm going to use the tip to scrape down so I can get the texture that's on the pot. I'm going to add a circle to the top of my pot next, and this will give me an outline for where my pot is going to be and for the base of my plant. And then I'm going to add a little bit of black to my palette to shade in that whole background, to really bring some depth into that, so that once I paint the leaves over it, this will be the base for everything. So really get this color on nice and thick, nice and black. And then I'm using more black and just dipping my 5/8 flat brush, and I'm using the side of it to just drag down and to do my supports for this orchid. And I'll show you that right here. I'm just starting from the top and pulling all that black paint down. And I really like a flat brush for doing that. Now here I'm going to mix the paint for my leaves. I'm starting with green and I'm adding a little bit of yellow. And then a little bit of white just to bring it into a lighter shade. And this is giving me the color that I want and the shading that I want. And because I have black on my palette already, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use having this lighter shade and having some black to put some of the darker green on part of my paintbrush and some of the lighter green on the other half of my paintbrush, and just let part of these leaves be darker and use the darker for the leaves that are at the bottom. Now I'm going to taper my brush. I'm starting at an angle, making it wide in the middle, and then bringing it back to an angle. Here I'm mixing the paint color for my stem, and I have that green already, but I'm going to add a little bit of red and a little bit of blue to give it a purple tint. And this is where I showed you that mistake I made. I'm doing the stems, and I'm doing them a little bit thicker toward the top, and I'm going to end up going over this and taking that out. But I didn't realize this right away, so I didn't use a wet rag to wipe it off. And I'm just using a size 5 brush to bring in a little bit of that purple green to the edge of the leaves wherever I feel like there should be some shading. And just touching up anywhere I feel like I wanted more of that. Now here I'm going to mix the background color and try to match it to my painting so that I can go back over. This really took a while to match those colors. It's really hard to get an exact color match later on, so it's always better to fix the mistake right away if you see it. But here I did a pretty good job, I feel, of matching the background color and just going over and over. And I'm going to go through this part pretty quick because I had already showed you earlier in the video where I'm just laying the orchid flowers and the stems wherever I feel like they should belong. You can get kind of creative with this, just follow along with an orchid. And I'm just going in and doing a little bit of detailing here. I'm adding some dots to the stems, some purple dots. And here I'm going to mix purple for the orchid. Now I wasn't really happy with my purple color to begin with, so I'm going to try to go slower, try to get the exact purple violet that I want. And so I'm doing just a little bit of red and white, and then bringing in just a touch of blue. And I'm just going over all the orchids to bring in this new color of purple and see if it's going to be the color that I want. I'm not doing a whole lot of detail work, just really focusing on the shape here. The orchids have 3 petals in the back and then 2 big rounded ones in the front. So I'm going through and just doing all 3 back petals first and then 2 big side ones. And I still wasn't happy with that. I felt like my red that I got from Blick just couldn't make that violet color. And so I used another set of acrylics that I got off of Amazon. I'll put the link to it below. Go ahead and go in the descriptions if you want to see any of the supplies I use. I'll keep a running list. And I'm just blending this, getting that really violet color I want. Adding some red, adding some blue, and using that base of white to bring it into the light shade. And I'm going over these orchid flowers again for the 3rd time. And that actually really comes to an advantage because acrylics are semi-transparent. So I did need to go over it a few times. And that let me take my time to really figure out the color I want. And again, I'm just focusing on the shape, doing the 3 petals in the back and the 2 big side petals. And now I have a little bit of darker shade of purple, and I'm just going to go in and blend it. I'm using a rounded brush here to just put a little bit of the darker on the tips and pull it in toward the center. And just anywhere I feel like it should be a little bit darker. I'm starting with the 3 petals in the background because they should be a little bit darker, and doing that darker purple, and then doing the top 2 side petals. And I'm adding some dots in the back, and some white stripes to the leaves. Just really looking at the plant and trying to match the colors that I see on it and the shading. And on my pot, even though it has this nice texture and the light kind of does some of the shading for me because that, I'm going to add in some white to just bring that look that the sun is hitting it in certain spots. So I'm almost going to do a triangle down with white and then 2 side triangles with black. I'm just going to continue going through this, adding in any little details. And here I'm using a number 3 rounded tip brush and just rolling it in between my fingers, and that lets me get this random texture that will be the little paper shreds. I'm just using white here and just rolling the paintbrush between my fingers, dipping it in water to give it just a little bit. Here you can see I'm adding that black to my pot and just touching up. Now here I want to show you how I am rolling. I'm dipping my size 3 paintbrush into water. I'm letting that drop of water drip off. I'm dipping it into my paint and I'm just rolling it back and trying to get a nice rounded tip. And with that really fine rounded tip, I am able to do some of the detailing. Now again, I'm mixing that purple violet color. I'm doing 2 main colors, or 2 main shades, I guess, a lighter and a darker. So with the lighter, I'm going to outline the petals, and with the darker, I'm going to put the 2 side petals on each. I don't really know what those are called, but you can see in the center of each flower, there's 2 little side petals that are dark, and then this one that goes straight out. So I'm doing all three of those with this darker color of the violet. And then I'm adding a little bit of yellow because I see some yellow in the center of each flower. Here I'm going to give you a closer look of how I did the flowers with the darker petals, the three in the back, the two big side petals, the two dark ones in the front, and the white dots. So that's our finished orchid painting. I hope you were able to follow along. Please give me a like and subscribe.